Hello there, hope you're doing great. I've received a lot of questions about vegetable oils and seed oils. As you recall in my book, I talk about the dangers of these seed oils, or what are better known as vegetable oils, used in all manner of processed food, in restaurants, and in baking and cooking for most of the last 50 years in kitchens all over America. So again, as a lot of people have asked me, what's the real danger to these oils? A lot have heard the constant marketing messages on TV about these oils being heart healthy. And so they wonder what the truth is. So I thought I would take a few minutes to give you the lowdown on these oils. So buckle in, I'm going to tell you the truth, including the science behind them and why they're making you sick and potentially destroying your health. So how did they become so common? Well, it all began in the 1920s. Back then, these oils were used only for machinery in industrial use. In those days, the percentage of calories that we received from vegetable oils was 0. Today, that percentage might be as much as 20 or 25% of all the foods we eat. Vegetable oils weren't originally called vegetable oils. They were called seed oils. And as I mentioned, only used in industrial machinery. To obtain and use vegetable oils, they all have to be extracted chemically from grains and seeds. So why do we call them vegetable oils? Well, honestly, the word vegetable is used strictly for marketing purposes. Seed oil, grain oil, these don't sound all that healthy, right? But the truth is, vegetable oils are really industrial seed oils. So how did they go from being used in machinery to being used in our food? Well, I think it originally goes back to two soap makers in the early 1900s, William Procter and James Gamble, names I'm sure you've heard. They historically made soap from rendered pork fat, but being smart and innovative and wanting to be more savvy in their business, they decided to create a new type of soap using seed oils. And around the same time that they were doing that, petroleum oils were also discovered and starting to be used for all different kinds of purposes. Interestingly, cottonseed oil had long been used for lighting lamps, but was soon replaced in the early 1900s by petroleum. So as a result, cottonseed oil sort of became a toxic waste until these enterprising gentlemen, Procter & Gamble, decided to use that cottonseed oil to make soap. And in the process, they learned that they could also use cottonseed oil, if it was chemically altered, to turn it into a solid by way of a process called hydrogenation, adding hydrogen to the liquid oil. That product in the early 1900s, that first hydrogenated oil, became what we now know as Crisco. And I know many of you remember seeing Crisco in your parents' kitchen. So what was formerly known as a toxic waste became an integral part of most Americans' diets. Other vegetable oils followed soon thereafter. Soybeans, I think, were introduced in the 1930s. By the 1950s, canola and corn and safflower oils became hugely commonplace in kitchens everywhere. The low cost of these cooking oils, combined with the marketing on the part of these manufacturers, made them wildly popular in American kitchens, even though their use was unprecedented in human history, had never been seen before. So how are these seed oils made? Well, it's not good. But I told you I'd tell you the truth, so here goes. The extracted oils have to be refined, bleached, and deodorized before they can be consumed by humans. There's essentially a 5-step process. Let me walk through each of these steps briefly. First, naturally, the seeds have to be gathered from plants. Among the most common, soy, corn, safflower, sunflower, cotton, and rapeseed, which becomes ultimately canola oil. Then, step 2, the seeds have to be heated to extremely high temperatures. This causes the unsaturated fatty acids in the seeds to oxidize. That's not good. This oxidation creates byproducts that are extremely harmful to our health. In fact, I'm here to tell you, and I've talked about this a little bit before, that we now know this damage from oxidation is perhaps the single leading cause of clotting along our vessel walls. That clotting is the real and true cause of heart disease and stroke and heart attacks, not the buildup of cholesterol that you've been told to believe. Clotting is the secret and the key. The next step is that the seeds are processed with a petroleum-based solvent that maximizes the amount of oil extracted from the seeds. The next step is awful. These seed oils have a really foul smell when they're extracted. So basically, the manufacturers have to use chemicals to deodorize the oils. This deodorizing process produces trans fatty acids, which are well known, and I know you've heard about, to be extremely harmful to our health. And the last step is where more chemicals are added to improve the color of these seed oils. The final end product is an energy-dense but nutrient-poor oil that contains chemical residues, trans fats, and other really harmful products. So how did these become heart healthy? Well, in the late 1940s, as I talk about in my book, a small group of cardiologists were a member of a small organization now known as the American Heart Association, right? The AHA claimed that seed oils were healthier than traditional animal fats. Then our old friend Ancel Keys in the 1950s, I talk about him in my book, introduced his diet heart hypothesis. His data, which was skewed, suggested a link between saturated fat and cholesterol intake and heart disease, a link that doesn't really exist. So if you've read my book and you've done any research on your own, you know that the data was skewed and that his information wasn't truthful. Since animal fats are a rich source of dietary saturated fat and cholesterol, they quickly became the object of Keyes' hypothesis, basically saying they were unhealthy. Keyes instead recommended the consumption of polyunsaturated fats, otherwise known as these seed or vegetable oils. Very soon thereafter, there were ads for heart-healthy margarine, which is a solid form of vegetable oil, and other seed oils became commonplace in our diet. And in fact, much healthier traditional fats were demonized. Saturated fats were labeled as heart clogging. Because of the marketing and poor advice from government agencies, the general public accepted this as the truth. So during the last 50 years or so, rates of heart disease and cancer and many other chronic diseases have skyrocketed as the public has consumed less saturated fat, increased its intake of processed, industrialized fats and foods and prepackaged foods, and in the process, greatly increased their consumption of seed oils. Obesity rates have likewise mirrored this dramatic rise in chronic disease, with 2/3 of us now being overweight in the US. The research is now overwhelming that you should not eat these types of seed oils. So what are the truly healthy fats you should be eating? Well, I talk about them in the book, but to summarize, it's the animal fats: lard, tallow, fish oils, coconut oil, avocado oil. The bottom line, my friends, is this: do everything you can to eliminate seed oils from your diet. It'll have a major impact on your health and energy levels. You'll notice a difference in how you feel within a couple of weeks, guaranteed. Give it a try. All right. Thanks for joining me. I know this has kind of been a little bit lengthy, so back to your regular scheduled programming.